Hey everybody, I'm Dom, and this is Dom-Ination. So because I'm filming this in winter, and that's not really the most ideal weather conditions for sparring in, I decided that I was going to make my first sword review. And what better sword for a first review than the first sword that I ever got? And the first sword that I ever got was this guy. The Death Reaper Full Tang Chaos Sword. Now, I'm not exactly sure who the manufacturer of this sword is. All I can tell you was that when I bought it off the website swords.com. Now, before anybody goes trying to look for this sword on that website, I actually looked recently and I saw that this sword was no longer part of their inventory. But you can still get it from other websites. It's not like that was the only one you could have gotten it from. But the question is this sword really worth seeking out? Is this particular model actually worth going to try to find? Well, let's find out. This is my review of the Death Reaper Full Tang Chaos Sword. Okay, so a little bit of history with me for a sec. When I was in my freshman year of high school, my favorite sword design was the scimitar. I don't really know why, I just kind of felt like the scimitar had that really cool Arabian Nights feel that kind of just spoke to me. And I also thought that since it was a really curved blade, I thought, it's gotta be a really good cutter, right? And after a trip to the Dells, which had a lot of sword shops where I went, I decided that I really wanted to buy a sword to hang on my wall, which led me to buying this for about 20 bucks plus 10 in shipping off of swordswords.com. So yeah, I got it, hung it on my wall, and I was very happy. And then a friend of mine kept nagging me to use it in the woods as a machete, and I kind of fell to peer pressure. So I did use it in the woods as a machete, and I was actually kind of surprised to see that, this was actually a pretty decent machete. Sure, the thing got damaged, but all the damage was done by my dumb decisions, and it was no way the fault of the manufacturers. In fact, I still use it as a machete now today, and it's still pretty decent. It still cuts well, and it still retains a little bit of an edge. So, that's enough history. Let's look at the actual weapon. As I said before, this sword shares the look of a scimitar, although significantly shorter than an actual scimitar. That means we got the curved blade this way and the recurve this way on the blunt side. However, now that I look at it, this blade design is really kinda awkward. On the blunt side, we start with this straight edge, which goes into the dip, or the recurve as I mentioned before, and then from the point, it curves outward, then it curves back inwards, curving outward to form an unsharpened spike, going back in, and then making another unsharpened spike, and now we're back at the crossguard where we started. And for me, in an actual fight, this would be extremely awkward and obnoxious to maneuver. Heck, even when I use it as a machete, it's still really awkward to cut with. And because of the awkward blade design, the blade's not really balanced, which kind of makes it all the more awkward and obnoxious when I'm using it. But it's not just the blade design that's really awkward, it's the actual material itself. As I probably should have mentioned before, this blade is a stainless steel blade, and that's probably not the best stuff to use when making a sword blade. The reason? It's just too brittle and stiff. The reason a sword works is because of the springiness it has when it hits something and kind of bounces back off. If a blade is too brittle, it's not going to bounce, it's more likely actually going to have a bigger chance of breaking. And that's kind of the thing with stainless steel swords, is that they're just too brittle to bounce and are more likely gonna break than anything. Surprisingly, this one hasn't really broken. Yeah, the kind of chipped from accidental contact with another blade, and the tip kind of bent because I smashed it into a rock, but that's just gonna happen with any sword you do that to, so it's not just stainless. The only other thing about this blade that I really want to mention is the design that's going down the blade. I just thought it was a really cool design. Is it necessary? No, not really, but I just thought it was a nice touch. Over the spikes on the sword, I honestly feel like you could just do away with those and you'd actually have a better sword. They don't help in combat, and they're not even sharp. All they do is just make the sword look more dangerous and fearsome than it actually is. So that's enough of the blade. Let's move on to the guard. The guard, as you might be able to see, is actually a disc guard, and I'm just going to assume that the this guard is made out of stainless steel as well. And for a sword like this, I don't really mind a disc guard. I usually don't like them, but for this I don't mind because it allows more versatility with my cuts and it still offers a little hand protection. However, I wish the disc guard was a little bigger, and the reason for that is that when I grip it, I still see a lot of exposure on my hand. On this side, you got my thumb exposed here, and here you got my knuckle, and actually a good majority of the back hand is exposed. And in a real fight with this thing, it's probably not going to protect very well against an assault on my hand, and I would be pretty easily disarmed. However, I'm not a huge fan of disc guards. I'm much more of a fan of cross guards, and I'll explain that more when I get to reviews of swords with cross guards, but I'll tell you right now is that cross guards, they just offer better hand protection for me. Now we've come to the hilt, or some might call it the handle. When this sword came to me, it was actually bound with a very long black leather strip all across the hilt and even going into the pommel, and I quickly found out I was really disappointed with that wrap job. It also doesn't help that beneath the wrapping, the hilt is actually 2 blocks of wood that, get a load of this, aren't even fastened to the Tang. Now I know traditionally that hilts weren't really fastened onto blades, but that's because the hilt actually slid onto the Tang and was actually fastened in place by both the crossguard on this side and the pommel on this side so that it didn't really go anywhere. However, that's not the case here. The Tang is actually 2 pieces of wood, and when that's the case, it should be fastened to the sword with something stronger than just very lightly wrapped leather piece. Sadly, there isn't, and the poor assembly of the hilt onto the Tang is just reason enough not to buy this sword. In fact, this actually led to a problem with the 2 pieces of the hilt sliding away from the crossguard up the hilt towards the pommel, and yeah, that caused a lot of problems. But alas, I fixed the problem by rewrapping it with electrical tape, and I haven't had any problems with the hilt since. However, that's not a problem that I should have had to fix. This is something that should have been looked at by the company itself, and I think it's just inexcusable that this got a free pass. And finally, we come to the pommel. And I don't really know what to say about it, really. I mean, I like the ring and all on it, but I feel like it would just bend or break if I tried to be offensive with it. And considering that the pommel is probably stainless steel as well, and the fact that this was made in China, I'm probably not far from the truth. Well, made in China, there you go. That's the problem with it right there. And also, I should definitely mention the sheath that came with this sword. It's made out of some sort of cloth cut to fit the shape of the sword. But considering the weird shape of the sword, the sheath utilizes a zipper in order to get the thing in and out. But then one dumb thing about this sheath is that it has a strap saying, hey, you can carry it on your back, but the thing is, if it has a zipper, you're not going to be able to get it out from your back. Also, I'm just going to say that back sheaths are the stupidest thing ever, so that's really not winning this thing any brownie points. However, you don't have to carry it on your back because of this top loop right here, which can go through your belt, and then therefore you can wear it on your waist. This makes it slightly easier to unsheath the sword, but it's still a huge hassle. Also, the inside of the sheath has this plastic covering that protects the cloth actually getting cut from the blade. So that's actually really good. And considering that not all sheaths have this is definitely a helpful feature. There's also a little strap right here that holds the hilt in place, and that would be helpful if the Velcro lasted a lot longer than it did. Also, going back to the zipper, I'm just gonna say this is really weak. I already lost the handle for the zipper, and every single replacement that I put on the zipper, it just falls off. So yeah, I'm really not satisfied there. So here are my final thoughts on this sword. It's definitely not a good way to spend your money. If you're just looking for a sword to just hang on your wall and not be used, yeah, it's good for that, but then again, so is any sword. And if you're looking for a functional weapon, this thing's best function is a machete, but then again, you might as well just buy a real machete. Other than that, the blade isn't practical, the guard isn't protective, and the hilt is just poorly assembled. So you'd be better off saving your money and getting an actual machete or getting a sword with a carbon steel blade, which is actually the kind of steel that you want in your sword blade. So yeah, this sword looks cool, but in this case, looks can definitely be deceiving. And that ends today's video. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you have a video idea of something you want to see me do in the future, comment below and let me know. Make sure to like the video if you liked it, favorite it if you loved it, and subscribe to Dom-Ination if you want more of it. Once again, I'm Dom, and this was Dom-Ination. See you guys next time!